Hey everyone, this is Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn how to more effectively live with your borderline personality disorder or your CPTSD, or you will learn how to live more effectively and manage your emotions if you consider yourself a highly sensitive person or have difficulties managing your emotions. I share with you my wisdom, insight, research, knowledge, and experience after living with borderline personality disorder for the last 30 years and being diagnosed for the last 20 to 21 years. I have done multiple rounds of DBT. I have done group therapy, one-on-one therapy. I have done the homework and the work continuously at home. I have workbooks and books. You get it. I'm pretty committed. While I am not a psychologist or a therapist, I can answer one thing that most of those folks cannot, which is, what is it like to live with borderline personality disorder? And I don't have the degree, but I have the disorder. And so that allows me to share with you insight and wisdom from both sides of the spectrum in a way that your psychologist or therapist just cannot tune into. And so that's one of the unique perspectives I can offer on this channel. If you're a family member or friend or spouse or just someone who is interested in positive solution-based approaches to recovery, which is what I offer and I focus on, then you're in the right place, and there is a playlist for you entitled Vids for the Family. Well, if that all sounds good to you guys, let's hit subscribe in the button below so you never miss a beat. I produce anywhere from 3 to 5 videos, all something new. Let's get started. In my videos, I can look at my analytics and see which keywords really jump out and what people normally search for and how that leads them to my videos. And one of the, after keyword searches like borderline personality disorder or shame or object constancy, that was like my biggest, most viewed video. Dysregulation really seems to get a lot of interest, and a lot of my videos on dysregulation get a lot of views. And so just like the video I did on shame not long ago, actually created a playlist entitled Shame, so check that out. But you just can't cover a topic like shame or even borderline or dysregulation in 1 or 2 or even a dozen videos, right? There's always something kind of new to talk about or a different angle. And so today's angle that I want to talk about with dysregulation is how our inner monologue leads us to the turmoil of dysregulation. You know, I'll let you look up the DSM. Well, actually, I'll post it briefly here. But the DSM-5 of borderline personality disorder, and there's 9 characteristics. And you will often see one of the criterion listed as, you know, emotional lability or intense and frequent mood changes. These are all keywords that generally lead up to one manageable word that we are told in therapy and we learn in DBT, which is dysregulation. So what's dysregulation? Let's just kind of like talk about what dysregulation is. We all have a baseline in life, you know, and we call that the emotional baseline. And it's sort of your resting point or like your set weight, if you want to compare like your body weight to it. And your emotional baseline is sort of like where you are in a regulated, calm, logical, clear-headed state where you're able to be in wise mind. Wise mind is a combination of both your emotion and your logic mind. And I have a little diagram here that I often use to characterize this. And think of the wise mind as this regulated state, this baseline, and think of dysregulation as an extreme, right? And so with BPD, we think in extremes. There's black or white, there's I love you or I hate you, there's fire or there's water, and oftentimes we find it hard to be in between. And so these sort of extremes flow us into dysregulation. And there's all different sorts of ways to fight against the dysregulation or to better prepare yourself and arm yourself with tools that enable you to look at life or view situations in a lens that doesn't lead you down a path of extremes or dysregulation. And so if you think of an emotional baseline as regulated in a wise mind, you can consider dysregulation being in one of the extremes. So either way west in emotion mind, or way east in logic mind. And you're always looking to aim for this middle ground, right? That's just this whole thing of BPD. Finding the middle ground, gray zone thinking, wise mind, being in a stable emotional baseline, all of those things have in common is a middle path, is this baseline. And when you become dysregulated, okay, you are off that baseline. You're up here, you're down here. You know, you're very manic or you're very depressed. You know, you're very angry and you're uncontrollably shaking, or you're completely apathetic and you can't even bother to get out of bed to like take a shower, right? And so in these dysregulated states, they can all be led out from somewhere. You know, your physical state of mind, if you're getting your period, if you have a broken leg, if you have depression, if there's been a death in the family, or if something really positive happens, right? Like you've met someone new and all you can see is rose-colored glasses and like this whole relationship's gonna work out. But what I want to focus on today is the dysregulation that comes from the inner monologue and the things that we tell ourselves and how those get us into trouble, and how just turning down the volume on that inner monologue can save us hours, days, weeks of dysregulation. So let's get into it. So when I talk about dysregulation from inner monologues, I'll give you an example from my own life of how this has taken off on its own. And it was not too long ago. And I want, when I was really not able to access my skills or put them into practice without like pulling out a phone or my notebook and looking at them, it was very difficult to be able to slow myself down in that moment and like bring all of these things together to stop myself from getting on that emotional Ferris wheel, which takes, or the emotion train that takes you in dysregulated town. And so I would think to myself, oh, well, if I feel dysregulated, then I've blown it and I suck at my skills and I'm never going to get better and everybody can see I'm dysregulated, so I'm just going to go home and just hate myself, right? The thing is that nobody can really tell but you. You may think that you have done a bad job at something, but everyone else's perception is that you've done a fantastic job. You may think that you've given a speech or presented a meeting at work and you think you flubbed a line or you missed a point, and so, oh God, my boss is gonna think I'm terrible. But instead your boss gives you an attaboy or an attagirl, like, great job. So the first thing to remember here is that nobody can really tell when you're feeling dysregulated. The only way that people can really see when you're dysregulated is if it starts to physically manifest, the worrying, the tense, the loss of eye contact, or if you're saying something or doing something that's sort of where did that come from, right? Like having an emotional outburst or argument or just leaving, walking straight out of the room, all things I've done, by the way, so I'm not passing judgment there. But so several days ago, I have a friend and we normally text every day, and sometimes we even have a phone call once a day, or we send phony voice notes. And I've mentioned this before, that I like patterns and predictability, and so when I start to see patterns, that sort of helps me tune into, okay, this is what I know what to expect from this person in this relationship, and this is how it works. Well, so this one day I really didn't hear much from this person. I would text, but I would get one word or really short sentenced replies. It felt odd. And because it felt odd and out of character and out of this predictability pattern that I was used to for our friendship, I began to go into this type of thinking. Why haven't I heard from her? She doesn't like me. What did I do? Let me go and let me read all of my texts. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I shouldn't have said this. She's gonna hate me. Oh, I blew that friendship. Oh, see, 2 months, 3 months is how long I can keep friends, and then I just blow it. And then I was getting my, I was PMSing, and so like I had this extra dysregulated emotional state going on. And I was in the middle of work, and I literally pulled over, and I was feeling so stressed out by that. And then other things were entering into my mind, like, you're never going to get out of this financial burden from the pandemic. You're never going to be able to do this. You're never going to be able to do that. And this inner monologue took off during a time while I was still at work. And I drive for work quite a bit. And I was like, I need to pull over. I need to collect myself. I have a job to do. And I pulled over into some street parking, and I cried a little bit. And I didn't let it spiral, but I left myself thinking, like, I didn't leave myself, but I left, like this monologue, like, okay, you know what? You're gonna have to turn this off for right now, and you're gonna have to go to work. And when you get home, you can kind of like recoup or regroup yourself. But what this state of mind did was it drained a lot of energy, right? And I had convinced myself that my friend wasn't going to like me anymore. And I convinced myself that I was always going to be friendless and moneyless, right? And so this reinforces your perception of the world, or what we commonly call confirmation bias, that you look out for things that line up with what you may believe in the world. So if you think all men are shit, you're going to see the bad in every man, right? And you may overlook the good. If you think that all pit bulls are scary, then you may always recoil from them and like cross the street. And so you do these behaviors that line up with your inner monologue. And the problem with that is the inner monologue is just a rough draft of a script that still has 27 revisions to go. And if you put into motion page 1, draft 1 of the inner monologue, you're going to have a bad play. Something's going to go wrong. You're going to ruin a friendship. You're going to upset a otherwise pretty peaceful balance, because that emotion that I know is so difficult to contain, it's like a Coke bottle, and you're gonna just like shake it up, right? And like this is the dysregulated state, and like you can either release the cap, or you can try to just contain it and let that fizz go down, and then open the cap later, and you haven't spilled the soda. So in this process of me having this inner monologue that was, one, incorrect. My friend was not upset with me. There was nothing wrong. I knew that I was in emotionally dysregulated state. And in part, I was predisposed, the financial stress, the pandemic, my PMS, but the inner monologue didn't help. And so this is how the inner monologue can cause us to become dysregulated. And when we are dysregulated, then our energy is sapped. When I was really unable to handle my emotions, it would ruin a day or a week, or I'd have to call off work, or, I'd have a lot of explaining to do to people in the next few days, or I would just be like, well, I blew that relationship, like I'm never going to show my face again. And so a lot, I believe, of the dysregulation comes from the thought process. And this is a little bit about what DBT goes into, that, the physiological state of how you feel. So, being calm leads to a greater sense of mind calmness. Being in a revved up, angry state will speed up your thoughts. When you're in that wise mind or regulated emotional baseline state, this is really sort of your peak performance. Like this is how well your software will run for you and perform how you want it to. So now that we know that our emotional dysregulation can come from inner monologues that are incorrect, how can we stop or put pause on the script? Well, let's find out. my advice to you, and something that I have works for me almost in all of these situations, or in most of these situations, is to put the script down. Think of it like that. You're telling yourself an inner monologue that's going to cause you dysregulation. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to close the book and you're going to put the book down and you're going to pick up another book. You're going to distract yourself, right? So the analogy of picking up another book is distracting yourself. In the instance that I described from the other night, I said to myself, okay, I have to focus on my job now. I've got to be as professional and I've got to come off as professional as possible. That's my goal, right? And so that's what I lead off with. And that worked. I was able to get my work done, right? I went home. I was tired. Yes. I watched something that made me feel good and I got a really, really good night's sleep. But what if I hadn't put down the script? What if I hadn't focused on work? What would have happened then? I would have gotten more spun up. I maybe wouldn't have been able to perform my job. Then I would have had an explanation of why I couldn't perform my job. Then maybe I would get a bad reputation. Then maybe I'd come home and I'd be so upset with myself that I was like, well, you deserve more punishment. I'm going to cut off a friend. I know they don't like me anyway. It would just lead to a bigger snowball, right? And so really that step one is put it down, put the script down, okay? And find another script or something else to distract yourself. And I've said that, and these aren't new tips, distracting yourself is a DBT skill. I talked about it in my last video about how to distract yourself. And then the second tip is you are going to have to sit in that uncomfortable place of ambiguity, which looks like this. I don't know why I haven't heard from her. You're going to use that gray zone thinking. Okay, well, I haven't heard from her, but I don't think there's anything wrong with our relationship, I'm not sure of what's going on right now, so I'm not going to act on it, and I'm also too busy to act on it, right? So coming up with these neutral expressions or explanations that don't lead to the jump to conclusions game. And then the third thing that I would suggest doing is doing something in that moment then, so you've been distracted, you've given yourself a neutral explanation because you're going to have to sit steady in the boat and wait it out, is to do something that makes you feel masterful, that third tip. So that means doing that thing that makes you feel good. So in my case the other night, like going and doing a really good job and, sending off a really solid report card to my client, that made me feel good. Maybe it makes you feel good to, throw the ball around with your dog. Maybe it makes you feel good to write a chapter in a book or post to your blog, or it's just something that gives you a sense of self-esteem, because a low self-esteem is really tied into a lot of I'm not good enough, they're going to leave me, and this is why I'm a piece of shit, right? So it's that again, which is that inner monologue. My name's Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. We've been talking about how inner monologues can lead to emotional dysregulation and how you hold the keys to stop that page from being turned to leading to a greater sense of dysregulation. Please consider subscribing, liking, comment, sharing below. And until I see you next time in everything that you do, please be effective. Bye-bye.